The first two episodes of Alien Earth give a nearly top-tier, premium presentation of its world, but it's forgetting to ask some vital questions, without which I may lose interest even as a big fan of the Alien franchise. Hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Alien Earth reads, when a mysterious space vessel crash lands on Earth, a young woman and a ragtag group of tactical soldiers make a fateful discovery that puts them face to face with the planet's greatest threat. All right, so what does this thing feel like? This is an ongoing series now from a franchise that's normally been one movie at a time. So I expected that the pacing might feel different, like what the nature of the storytelling would be different. It feels like a blend of serious sci-fi drama, suspense, and sci-fi horror. It definitely is bringing back the xenomorph, the classic Alien, but there's some other alien creature concepts in the mix, and it's dealing very much with the kind of through line of artificial intelligence that began with the first movie, and I think a lot of people could easily forget is a major part of the franchise and pretty consistently to my memory. The focus in this story so far is divided between several sets of characters and situations. You've got the cyborg Morrow on the Yutani research spaceship with a variety of alien specimens on board that he's got some kind of an agenda with. You've got Wendy and the other kids whose minds have been transferred into synthetic adult bodies to serve the Prodigy Corporation. And Wendy's surviving brother Hermit is a medic on Prodigy's search and rescue team who believes his younger sister Marcy is dead, even though she is now the renamed Wendy in a synth body. So we're jumping between these different characters with a little bit of attention also given to the head and CEO of the Prodigy company and kind of his agenda for the transferred consciousnesses of these kids and their new bodies. The first two episodes involve the Prodigy search and rescue team securing a crash site and discovering dangerous alien life forms as they do so, and there's various situations that predictably involve people meeting horrible ends as victims of both the classic xenomorph and other menacing alien life forms that are discovered. The growing question, I think, in the first two episodes is if and when Wendy will, as she's named herself now, will reunite with her brother and how that reunion will potentially go. There's also some background intrigue regarding the cyborg Morrow, who's the employee of Yutani, and he's got some sinister behavior patterns, and the 20-something genius founder and head of the Prodigy company trying to get his hands on whatever is in the crashed ship before Yutani can recover it. So we've got those background kind of bits of intrigue going on as well, but it is mostly focused on, the lion's share anyway, on Wendy and the other kind of kids in synth bodies. I'm personally feeling more curious than invested in the story and characters. It's not really where I'd like to be. As I said, the lion's share of focus is given to Wendy and the other kids that are now in these adult synth bodies. I have trouble connecting to them as characters for multiple reasons. They look like adults, but they are supposed to have the minds of children. Their bodies are also basically superpowered, so I'm not afraid for them or see them as vulnerable, despite being children in their minds, because they look like adults and their bodies are extremely powerful. Neither can I relate to them as adults because they act like children. They are basically, to me, a curious oddity, not characters I care about or am even rooting for yet. I also don't feel concerned for their survival, and when you add all that up and they're given so much time, these things are a problem for me. I really want to feel more concerned for and invested in the characters that are being given the most focus. I also felt let down so far by how they are treating the concept of transferring human consciousness in order to achieve immortality. Not only does it not make sense, which I'm going to come back to a little bit later, but as a central concept of the show, it is so far lacking philosophical complexity, which in turn is a hugely missed opportunity for drama. We don't seem meant to question yet whether Wendy actually is the surviving consciousness of Marcy. It so far feels like we're just supposed to accept that she is. I want to be challenged more, philosophically and especially dramatically, regarding my feelings about Wendy. And whether or not they do that is going to make a big difference in how I ultimately feel about this show. Of course, I have to say that it does regularly deliver on alien suspense, creature weirdness, some body horror, definitely bloody violence and stuff. So I think if you want those ingredients in your alien experience, you're going to find them here. But without my investment in or concern for the focal characters, those monster moments lack so much of the intensity they could be having for me. As far as the cast goes, I don't have any complaints. They're all very solid in my mind. The adults acting like kids don't thankfully overplay that too much. And Timothy Oliphant, known best for his series Justified, plays the synth Kirsch, who's like a full-on synth. He's not a transferred consciousness. He's a full-on synth, and he serves as a somewhat stoic, mysterious chaperone for the synth kids, but he still has a little touch of personality that makes, I got maybe one or two chuckles out of him here and there. And he's chaperoning these synth kids as they're put to work and exploring their new potential. And yeah, I don't have any complaints about the cast or their performances. As far as the stunts and visuals, well, the xenomorph is often handled practically and looks great. In fact, in almost every instance I can think of, it seemed to be executed on practically. And they cut away enough in the editing to keep the xenomorph from being overexposed and demystified. I think that's really important. Smaller alien creatures are produced with CG, which is, I think in most cases, good to very good for TV. There's some instances where I'm like, okay, that's definitely not like premium movie quality or like top tier streaming service quality. It's not really raising the bar, or even at the top tier that I've seen in the past that I would have been hoping for, and that it looked like it was going to be, given the presentation visually in the trailers for this show, which just made it look like, oh my gosh, this looks freaking top tier cinema quality stuff. And it's not like that consistently, at least in terms of the CG. The sets and the costumes, they look great to my eye. That's where the production value really shines. They revive classic ship designs, especially, the interiors from the first, I'd probably say 2 movies. Although I can tell, or at least I think I can tell, in several other instances where they're pulling just much more lightly from other entries in the franchise. But the sets are filled with just great details. The lighting also does a lot to make the environments feel real to me. So when I'm watching this, I feel very placed in the world. I feel like these environments are real places, and that's great. That really helps my engagement in the show. Okay, so let's talk about themes and the transferring of human consciousness. Can a human consciousness be transferred to a machine? This is a popular sci-fi concept for 10 or so years now. I feel like in some ways increasingly it's being used as a concept. And I've even heard some people refer to this idea as a possibility for humans to survive death in real life. Even for them to survive. When you combine that with like a fantastical concept like Assassin's Creed's idea of just, hey, if you can just get a little bit of DNA from a person, that actually can give you access to all of their memories through their whole life, which is really kind of a fantastical idea. But I have heard in some conversations, people seeming to put kind of hope in the idea that like their brain or what remains of it, even after decomposition, could be dug up and they could be their consciousness could be transferred, or maybe their brain is frozen if before they become too old, that technology becomes more readily available or whatever. I don't often, it's in no way do I often hear people say this, but I've heard it just enough from people outside of fiction, either in conversation or just listening to a podcast or something. This is an idea that people are starting to consider, like, oh, maybe this is a way that I personally could end up surviving death. I don't know how seriously they're thinking about it. I would guess not very seriously, but I suspect they're thinking about it just enough that it's an easy escape hatch for them to avoid thinking about mortality at times. As Christians, I think it would be wise of us to be ready to ask questions of this idea in conversation when we hear it proposed. Because I think some people are starting to think of it as a way to survive death, when instead they should be mentally confronting the inevitability of their own death. That's a very healthy thing. I think that is kind of like there's a lemonade out of lemons aspect of that, living in this broken world in the fall where we are all faced with mortality. It's that mental confrontation with mortality that leads many to consider Jesus and the free gift of eternal life through belief in him. And so when we talk with people who are mentally detouring from that in favor of false ideas, it's good for us, not to callously pop their balloon in some kind of smart aleck exchange, but to gently ask questions that will help them kind of pop their own balloon and hopefully consider or reconsider Jesus. So what would be some questions to ask that I would want to ask, that I would love to see asked in this show? I think it would just result in more questions about, like, is this Wendy? Is it not? Is a reunion between her and her brother actually a reunion that they or we should be happy about? Or is there a reason to think, hey, maybe this isn't her? I would love that I think that would bring so much dramatic complexity. But let's just go back to the philosophical questions to ask. First, I would say, what do you mean by transfer or upload or download? Is that the same as when we do that with files on a computer? That is the basic comparison that is made. We're doing the same thing that we do with files on a computer. We are transferring, we're uploading, we're downloading. Okay, so assuming that the answer to that question is yeah, it's the same idea, then the follow-up question, I think, is, do we really move files from one location to another, or is that just kind of how we talk about it? I think the answer is we don't move files. We don't move these ones and zeros from this location to this location, to a different location. It's just how we talk about it. What we're actually doing is copying this information and then reproducing that set of ones and zeros in this other physical location. And so then I think the follow-up question is, if they're not quite seeing it yet, if I move a file from my computer to yours, why do I find that the file is still on my computer after I've moved it? Because that's what happens to me all the time. When I'm moving something off of my computer onto an external hard drive, unless I select at the outset to cut and paste, the default is just making a copy, and then I've still got this file. Once the transfer is successful, it's only then, when I know the file is safely copied to this other location, that I destroy the original data on the original location. So that's why, because we're not moving anything, we are copying it. And so then the final question, I think, is, would a perfect copy of your consciousness in another body result in your center of consciousness, from which you currently say I, me, and my, also being in that body? I mean, would that be the result? Is that your current consciousness that says I, me, and my, would it then be in that body? Or would it simply be another copy of your consciousness that from its own perspective says its own I, me, and my? These kinds of questions will hopefully help others realize that even if naturalism were true, notice I haven't even brought up the idea that of a non-physical component. That really throws a wrench in the works. But even if naturalism were true and there is no non-physical component to personhood that must be accounted for in such a quote-unquote transfer, the resulting consciousness in the new location is not actually the same being surviving death, but a new being that falsely believes it once existed in another body, in another place. There is no hope in this so-called transfer of consciousness for the survival of the original. Almost all stories dealing with this concept, including Alien Earth so far, dodge these vitally important questions by, ever so conveniently, often without explanation, having the original being die just before the copy wakes up and becomes aware. The only exception I can think of is the Arnold Schwarzenegger sci-fi movie The Sixth Day, which clearly highlights the problem in assuming an actual quote-unquote transfer of consciousness. So if your conversation partner has trouble coming to the right conclusion after asking the questions that I've suggested, I would strongly recommend inviting them, hey, come on over, you want to come over next weekend? Let's watch The Sixth Day and see what you think of that, and then have another conversation after watching that movie. All right, no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, Wait till all the episodes are out, get a month of Hulu, watch it at your own pace in that month. If they explore consciousness with more complexity, it could really suck you in. But if not, it'll probably take a while to finish this one. Even though you like seeing the alien and stuff like that, you like other elements of it, it doesn't really feel as scary for the protagonist, as horrifying for the protagonist, because you're not worried about the protagonist. The aesthetic presentation is great, and it scratches more of that Alien franchise itch. But so far, it's failing to pull you in to care about the characters. And it might even lose your sense of curiosity unless it makes some bold turns in the next episode or two. This one's rated TVMA, I believe, but I'm not sure, for bloody violence and language. And those are all of my thoughts for now on Alien Earth episodes 1 and 2. As always, love getting your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Then I hope you'll check out our weekly podcasts and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.